We are joined on the phone today by author Mathew Klickstein. We've had him on the show before here. He's got a lot of stuff coming up now, a new novel, a new comic book series. Hey, Mathew, how's it going?
Doing all right, ups and downs, strikes and gutters, Lebowski style.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out today. I won't keep you too long, just a couple minutes here.
Yeah, and thank you again for doing this. It's always really great to be on your show, and could use some promotion for the book and whatnot, so that'll be fantastic. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I know you've got a lot of stuff coming up here. And first, I wanted to ask you about the new novel you're working on. Can you tell the listeners a bit about that?
Yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's my first novel in a few years. Some of your listeners might be familiar with my nonfiction work, Slimed and Oral History of Nickelodeon's Golden Age, which we just put out a 5th anniversary edition of that a couple months ago. Or my The Simpsons book that I did with longtime showrunner, Mike Reese, Springfield Confidential, which we just had the paperback version of that come out after the hardcover came out about a year ago. But I really wanted an opportunity to tell my own story again and to just invent and imagine and fabricate. I did it just to see if I could even still do that. Most of my work, again, is nonfiction, even when I'm doing my short form articles and such, a lot of my pop culture history work. So I just wanted to see if I could do it. And I sat down, and before I knew it, I had written this entire novel, just picking at it on the side. A lot of it was motivated by my wife. She kept pushing me to get it done and so forth. And finally I did do it. And, I was working with a company on another project, a ghostwriting project, and they really liked what I did with that. They asked if I had anything else. And I said, well, there's this novel I've been picking at. If you want to read a few chapters, see if you want it. They did. And, it was a really great experience to go that fast with it. Usually you have to get an agent and you have to write this book proposal and you have to do this and that. And there's a lot of legal stuff and contracts and things take forever to even get your first money and whatever it is. And this was just a very nice, quick and easy process. The company putting it out is Post Hill, an imprint they just purchased called Permuted, actually is putting it out. It's distributed by Simon & Schuster, and it's called Selling Nostalgia, a Neurotic Novel. It's a lighthearted comedy, very much in the vein of Devil Wears Prada or Almost Famous. It kind of pokes some fun at so-called geek culture or the nostalgia industry, all the podcasts and conventions and blogs and reboots and reunions and a lot of the stuff that has been a big part of my, financial bread and butter over the last few years, and that of a lot of friends of mine in the industry as well. And so it's loosely based on myself and some experiences I've had in that world, and that experiences some friends of mine have had. And a lot of the characters are composites of different people we've known over the years, and many of them are kind of just almost paradigm or archetypes of people we've met just working at some of these different venues or film companies or conventions or whatever it is. So it was a lot of fun to do. And again, Selling Nostalgia, Neurotic Novels, its name. It'll be out August 13th in hardcover and Kindle. I like to always tell people, please order from your local bookstore. It's so important that we continue supporting our local businesses, particularly our local bookstores. So that's really important too. So hopefully, you can get it on Amazon and all those fun things. But, if you can order it from your local bookstore, that's helping them out too, which I think is very important.
Excellent. Yeah, it is. Seems like kind of people our age, grew up through the 80s and 90s, are the ones who are really, into this kind of pop culture that's popular now. And we're also the ones who are buying physical media, it seems. So it's hitting on both cylinders there.
No, absolutely. That's a lot of what the book is about. And it's a lot of what we are trying to do with the storyline and the characters and so forth. It really is, I see it as this generation's Devil Wears Prada or this generation's Almost Famous. You read a lot of books, you see a lot of documentaries about different celebrities and things like that. And, I just wanted to kind of tell the side of the story of the people kind of writing about it and making movies about it and sort of what that experience is like for me and some of my friends and, even people like yourself. I know that's kind of a lot of what you like to get into with your show. So, just wanted to kind of help tell our stories and all the ups and downs and the way things have changed over the last few years, and some for good and some for not so good. Just what it means with, streaming services now and a lot of stuff with social media and the internet. And, just the way even things like sociopolitics have changed and how that affects things like pop culture and so forth. So, overall, it's a funny book. It's a lighthearted book. Some of it's even somewhat cartoonish. Some of the characters are kind of almost like South Park characters and the like. We have a lot of fun in there because that's just the kind of person I am and that a lot of my friends are, and a lot of the people in this industry. We all, enjoy old movies and TV shows and books and music, and so that's obviously going to have a big impact and influence on the storytelling of the book. It does have some substantial drama in it and some moments that I think hopefully will really connect with people while they're having a good time and just laughing and having some fun.
Awesome. Again, author Mathew Klickstein with us, and we're talking about Selling Nostalgia, a neurotic novel that's coming out. And if that's not enough for you, you've also got a comic book series in the works. It seems like you have at least 4 or 5 different projects going on at the same time.
Yeah, it's usually how I like doing things. Even when I have a staff writing job at a newspaper, I wrote for about a year and a half for the Baltimore Jewish Times a couple of years ago as their senior reporter, which was a great experience. But, even while I was doing that, I was finishing the Mark Summers documentary that's currently being updated on Your Mark, and I was setting up all the stuff for the little sneak preview tour that we did of that around the country a couple of years ago. And I was also going up to New York every couple of weeks to work with Mike Reese on the Simpsons book. And meanwhile, I was doing a lot of stuff in the community in Baltimore itself, stuff for the JCC, and I became friendly with some of the local people at some local colleges and whatnot, do little guest lectures and stuff like that. So, I like to keep busy. I'm not really involved in social media. I don't play video games. I don't really watch a lot of TV. I don't have any kids, which obviously is a big help. I would like to have kids eventually, but right now I'm just focusing on the career. I don't sleep very much. So I like to work a lot. I like to do a lot of work. And also, Dustin, as you probably know, a big part of the industry I'm in is you're constantly having to put out material because 99% of it gets rejected. I mean, when I worked on this novel, I really did it for myself. It was a real labor of love. I had no real intention even in selling it or publishing it. I, wasn't sure if there was a market for it or what. But it just so happened the company I was working with on my last ghostwriting project enjoyed it and wanted to put it out. And the, advance wasn't huge, but it was definitely nice to get a little bit of money for it. And I'm proud of the book. And they did a great job at the cover design and the jacket. And they did a great job with the editing. I worked with a bunch of different editors. We worked really, really hard to make this the best book it can be. And I'm very proud of that. But, meanwhile, I'm working on book proposals all the time, and I'm trying to sell movies and TV shows, and some friends of mine and I are working on a cartoon series that we're trying to put out, because A, it's fun and it's what we do, but B, you've got to do a lot of stuff. I like to call it like the shotgun effect, and, you hope you hit something. And, I can't just do one thing, because if that one thing fails or doesn't go as big as I would hope, I'm kind of stuck. So I always like to have a few things running. In this case, you're right. My very first comic book series is going to be coming out in September. It's a 5-issue series. It's called You Are Obsolete. It'll be in comic book stores, I think, mid-September, and then it'll be an issue every month throughout the fall. For 5 issues, we're already starting to talk to some companies about film possibilities. I definitely think there's a film there. Obviously, companies like Blumhouse and so forth would do really well with a property like this. So we're very, very excited about that. And it's, another funny situation. It was originally an idea I had for a film. I was passing it around. I have a lot of buddies in the comic book world. They suggested I give that a shot. I brought it to the company I'm working with, Aftershock, which is a really, really great independent company, a lot of old Marvel and DC guys. And they're working with Garth Ennis right now on a new property. He's the guy who did Preacher. And they're working with R.L. Stine, actually, the guy who did Goosebumps, on a new property. So it's a great company to be part of, and I've just been having a ball. I, taught myself how to write comics, and I've been working with them. And the artists that they're bringing in to do the artwork are just true artists. I mean, they're amazing. I'm blown away every time I see the sketches and the coloring and everything. So I'm very, very excited about that. So the novel comes out next week, Selling Nostalgia, a neurotic novel, August 13th, and then the comic book series You Are Obsolete gets started up in September. A couple other little things that I'm working on here or there and so forth. But, it's fun, and I'm enjoying it, and it's great to become friendly with people like yourself and a lot of the other people that I've met through the geek culture industry, if you will, and nostalgia industry. I've made some of my closest friends, just people that I've worked with on different projects like the Mark Summers documentary or the Nickelodeon book. Through that, I became very, very close with Phil Moore, the host of Nick Arcade. He was nice enough to do a new introduction for the 5th anniversary edition that just came out. Jason Zimler, who was Ferguson on Clarissa Explains It All, remains a very close friend of mine. A few other folks, Michael Ray Bauer, who was Donkey Lips on Sleeper Shorts and been in a lot of other movies and TV shows. You meet all these great people. Getting to work on the Simpsons book with Mike Reese was a blast, and now I'm friendly with people like Judd Apatow and Al Jean, and beyond the fanboy aspect of it, a lot of these are really good people that are very helpful when I want to ask them questions for other interviews or even just advice. Many of them are nice enough to take some time to read my scripts and spec scripts for cartoons and TV shows and give me advice. And everyone makes a big fuss about celebrities being these divas and very entitled and rude and mean. And I got to say that just has not been my experience. I have met very few people like that, and I've interviewed hundreds, maybe thousands of people over the last 20 years of the work I've done. And almost everyone I've met or talked to has been really good, and many of them I've remained friendly with. And so there's a lot of that kind of stuff in selling nostalgia as well, sort of kind of looking at things from a much more realistic, truthful, authentic way, not kind of the way you just see it again in movies or TV shows about this kind of stuff. So.
Well, I got to say, man, it's incredible doing the ghost writing and then we're working on a novel, the comic books, a documentary, cartoons. I mean, these are obviously all very different types of, writing, styles of writing. And the fact that you're able to do all of them convincingly and all of them at the same time is definitely incredible to me.
Yeah, but you know what helps a lot, Dustin, is, and this I've only just realized recently because I have such this sort of vast repertoire now of work, all these different books and movies and other things that I've worked on since my late teens, really. I started writing as a professional in my late teens, so it's been more than half my life at this point. But I've noticed that they really do all they are thematically linked. And, you have someone like, obviously, a big hero of a lot of Wii writers is Hunter S. Thompson. And, he also just had such a prodigious output. Much of his work, of course, were letters and diaries and such. But still, you could read so much of his material. And he really saw himself as telling the same story, which was the death of the American dream. Or you have someone like Frank Zappa, who, again, just had such a prodigious output, and he was doing movies and cartoons and music and artwork and concept albums, and he was executive producing other bands and doing all this stuff. But I can't remember the word for it. He actually had a word for it, like a unified aesthetic or something like that, where he basically saw everything he was doing as part of one big story, one big project, even like the interviews he did and that sort of thing. So I'm realizing that I fall into that category as well, as far as, I'm doing all these different books and movies and cartoon such, but they really all thematically are linked, and they all deal a lot with, the idea of nostalgia, the idea of pop culture. Even the ghostwriting project I did I was not familiar with a man they call Mr. Skin. He has a website. It's one of the first commercially successful websites of all time. In fact, launched before Google, launched before Facebook. It was launched before Wikipedia. He was working on this back in the late 90s when no one even knew what a website was, and has become very successful. It's an archive of celebrity nudity, so it's a little bit outre and a little risque, but he keeps everything positive on the website, which I really appreciated. There's no criticism, which I think is so helpful in a society, and especially on the internet with everything so negative and toxic. I really liked him. I liked the people that he worked with at his office, and it was an assignment. I was asked if I wanted to do it, and it was some decent money and a lot of fun. And, again, Skin and I have become very close. I've become close with some of his other office mates and so forth, a lot of gals, a lot of guys, a lot of different people. And, every time I go to Chicago now, I like to hang out with them and such. But the point is, even with something like that, a celebrity nudity website archive and a web, just having to write about how you put a website together and how the branding worked. And it's a good book, almost like a business guide, really. And some people have started talking about it that way. The book is called Being Mr. Skin. And, but, I realized even that's kind of nostalgia and pop culture. He's somewhat of an unlikely pop culture icon. He's been referenced on Family Guy and obviously in Knocked Up, the Judd Apatow movie that, really featured him quite prominently. And, so he's a pop culture guy and a lot about nostalgia, some of the teen sex comedies of the 70s and 80s in particular, Fast Times at Ridgemont High and whatnot. So I realized even this assignment that I took on just for some money and for some fun still is very much in my wheelhouse as far as pop culture and nostalgia. The comic book series coming out is, more of a horror film and a little different than what I've normally done. But it, too, deals a little bit with pop culture and nostalgia. You have these little kids that are killing off their parents with an app that they've created on their phone. So there's obviously some references there to movies like Children of the Corn and The Wicker Man, Videodrome, and a few other, John Carpenter and Cronenberg movies and that kind of thing. But, it also deals with the idea of nostalgia and, the way that things are changing in society right now. So everything I'm doing, I think, deals a lot with nostalgia, deals a lot with pop culture, particularly the 80s and 90s, which is why it's great that I have this novel coming out where I kind of am able to really go for it. And it's really all about that and what it's like to be involved in that world and so forth.
Well, it's always great speaking with you, Matthew. And again, Selling Nostalgia, a neurotic novel, is coming out. The You Are Obsolete comic book series. You mentioned a lot of other stuff as well. Can you tell the listeners the best place to go for more information on all these projects coming up?
Absolutely. There's information all over the place right now. I'm actually very happy with how Aftershock, the company putting out my comic book, has been promoting the series. We had a great story in the Hollywood Reporter. It's one of the reasons we started getting some interest for the film. And obviously all the comic book blogs and whatnot, you can find some information at. But to find everything in one place, for me, it's my website, www.mathewklickstein.com. That is MathewKlickstein.com. And of course, you can find all my books on all the different websites, Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com and so forth. But as I do say, and especially with the comic book, support your local comic book stores, support your local bookstores. I always try to tell people to please, go to your local businesses. I love those people. I love record store owners. I love the people that are still, have their little video stores. I love people that have their little bookstores and whatnot. And they're working so hard to try to make that happen. And what they're doing is so important for our cultural community that I always try to tell people, please go and support those local businesses. You can find it on my website or any of these other websites or whatnot, but hopefully people will go out to their local bookstores and comic book shops as well to get those things. But thank you very much, Dustin, for having me on. It's always a blast talking with you. And thank you again.
Yeah, you bet, man. I always appreciate talking to you, and everything that you're usually working on is something I'm actually interested in. Again, anytime you got something coming up, just let me know. Absolutely. And people like you, Dustin, really are a big core audience of mine. People kind of in our age range, 20s, 30s, 40s, who are into, that nostalgia from the 80s and 90s, who are smart and well-read and, familiar with films and so forth. I think I'll just throw that in there. I think one of the real fun things that people have with Selling Nostalgia is a lot of the Easter eggs throughout. I made up a lot of names, I made up a lot of entities and organizations, but I also did slip in, some real people, and there's some really fun little guest stars and references to things like Punky Brewster and Boy Meets World, and a few other fun things from our childhood and so forth that I think people will get a real kick out of. So, it's almost like that TV show Space that Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and Edgar Wright came from. It is definitely chock full of a lot of real fun nostalgia and pop culture references throughout. I think people like yourself and a lot of your listeners will really enjoy it. But thank you very much, Dustin. I'm going to take off here, but I appreciate you having me on. And again, that was author Mathew Klickstein, and his new novel, Selling Nostalgia, a neurotic novel, is coming up, and also the comic book series You Are Obsolete. Get all the info at MathewKlickstein.com.